Hello and welcome to CheapSkate. I'm Cameron and this is episode 8, I think it is, where we make the sides for the hollow body or semi-hollow body of the guitar. Hopefully you can hear me over the sawing. I'm making here some just slats of wood to use for making the sides of the body. Also today we attach the neck, and we have a bit of a problem where the neck meets the body that we have to overcome, and I also make out some cavities in the body for the electronics. So if you've just started watching this episode, I am a beginner woodworker. I'm not very good at all. This is my first attempt at building a guitar. It's a prototype. So just cutting bits to size for the body. You're going to have bits with end grain mixed in with bits with flat sawn grain, all sorts of stuff like that. I'm not worried about it. This is only a test, and I'm just going to build up the sides. If I make a semi-hollow body out of some hardwood or something, I'll probably just use a thicker block and carve it out in the middle, hollow it out. But for the purposes of making this, I've just cut a bunch of bits of wood the same height so that I get the height I want. And now we're just gluing them on in turbo speed. I really do work that fast. Actually, I'm incredibly slow. But anyway. So the skeg at the top, or the horn, sometimes I call them on these guitars that look like this, the strats and stuff. So the horn at the top, I'm going to make that solid because it needs to be fairly strong, because I'm going to have the strap button up there anyway. So these black clamps with the little yellow thing, they're very cheap. They're not the best clamps, but this had nothing to do with structural integrity for the guitar, and of course it's not a guitar that I'm intending on keeping and playing, so I wasn't too worried about how well they were stuck down, as long as they sort of stay there for the build. That's why I didn't bother with fantastic clamps or anything. So I just sort of approximately cut these out a little bit on the bandsaw. Get a rough shape in this area, so it just gives me less to route off later on. Because I'm inexperienced, I fumble around with the best way to clamp things. You can see they've also drawn on the neck position on the inside there. And what I'm doing now is kind of weird for a neck through. I'm actually going to bolt it on. It was an idea I had. It turned out to be a really good idea, but I didn't really capitalize on it. So what I'm doing here is just clamping the neck. So I've drilled the holes through from the back, from the body. I'm now just clamping the neck in the exact position I want, and then just going back through those holes into the body and drilling like starter holes into the actual neck, just to make sure I get the position right and the neck's going to be lined up the way I want. And I've now drilled bigger holes, and I'm putting threaded inserts in. So if you haven't used threaded inserts before, they are just like metal screws that are hollow. You screw them in, and they've got another thread inside that you can put a bolt through, which I'm doing here. So the idea with this was I could put this on, then still work on the guitar with the neck on, and then take it off again later when I needed to glue it on. But as it turned turned out, I then realised that I couldn't put the final parts of the body where it meets the neck until the neck was in, so that the size of the body that I'm building, the parts that touch the neck have to but you want them to fit really tight, so I ended up just having to glue it anyway. So all those bolt holes really ended up doing was making it easy for me to do a glue up, because the neck was in position so it won't slide around, and I've really only got one clamp, this one here, that can reach the centre anyway, otherwise I'm better put any clamps on it. So the screws, the bolts did help actually quite a lot positioning their neck and holding it down for the gluing, but other than that it was a bit of a wasted effort. So now just making a piece to fit in tight against the neck. So the idea is I'm just going to lay it against the neck, because the neck's fairly straight, and then just get the angle of the other board underneath, sort of match it up by eye, draw a line on it, cut it a little bit big, and then sand it to shape. Well, that's the plan. Sip of my coffee there while I'm doing this editing. Okay, so that's the piece I've managed to shape up. And you've seen there how I put it in. So good thing about this is the tighter I push it forward, the tighter it gets on the joint, so it's kind of a good shape to have. Tried to do a similar thing on the other side by angling it. I couldn't get the shape quite right, so I had to make this little wedge to put in there. It'll probably leave a little gap, which wouldn't be acceptable on the actual build, but we'll get away with it for this one. Like I said, I would do the body differently on the actual build. I think if I was using a hardwood, I would just use a solid block and carve it out if I wanted to do something hollow. I mean, doing it this way would be interesting, but the mixing of the grains is very problematic. I'm going to say mixing the grains, mixing of directions of grains by just gluing on random pieces in random directions, because then, as you'll see when I come to route it, hitting different bits of grain that are next to each other with join and stuff isn't a good idea. Just put a little wedge in to jam it, make it a bit tighter. It's actually starting to look a little bit like a guitar now. With the neck on. And there you can see my shoddy workmanship. I apologise if the wind noises are irritating you, but that's why I'm doing a voiceover. So these couple of bits here I cut are just to widen that part of the neck, so that when I cut the pickup out and the bridge, it's wide enough to encompass all that and keep it, you know, strong and all that sort of stuff. This timber I'm using for the sides and for this little piece here as well was particularly soft wood. It had really low density and was just structural, like apparently structural timber or building timber, but it was obviously a very young tree, and the wood was really light and soft. So there you can see it's just overhanging a little bit all the way around, and now we're just going to use a router to cut through it. This particular router bit I'm using has a bearing on the top and on the bottom. So the bottom bearing is touching the body, and so the rest of the router bit should just carve it flush with the body. Should. So I'm starting to get a little bit better at routing, and I'm starting to try to shave off small pieces at a time. But if you're watching, then you've just seen a pretty big piece of tear out just come out. But I think we weren't at full depth there, so we might be okay. But you'll see a few pieces fly off, and that's what happens. You can see there's a chunk out there actually. So when you're hitting different grain, suddenly hitting different grain, you can get bits of chunk off. And also the joins, because I didn't do fantastic joins, if it hits a join that's sort of sticking up, it can just rip it out. So it's a bit scary when you get close to the neck, but having the bearing on top is kind of handy because it sort of stops you from doing anything really stupid. I hope it's not too boring watching this sort of stuff, but the reason I do it, and this is, by the way, I think at 4 times speed, the reason I do it is that if you're thinking about building a guitar and you're trying to look and see how to do stuff, one, you're seeing me, I'm not very good at stuff, and you'll see mistakes, so it's kind of good to see mistakes as they occur, but also I'm going through it because it helps you get a full understanding when you see someone doing it. All the steps rather than just skipping it and making it look glossy. So you can see there's some chunks out, and I'll give you a closer look at those in a minute. Looking a little bit rough. You can see there's a little chunk out there right on the bit we did, a little chunk. There's a big chunk just there. It does look quite nice in spots actually with the different grains. I mean, if you made a deliberate patchwork guitar, it probably would work out okay. So there's a bit out there. There's our massive chunk. Another one there. You can see that's where there's a join, and it wasn't a very tight join. Where the neck meets the body didn't come out the way I originally had planned it. I ended up carving more further down the neck than I originally wanted to. So you can see there's a gap just here, and this side's much bigger. It's got a big gap going down there. Yeah, so you can see that. So my intention was to just, basically sand this from back here and cut it in. So you saw me put a bit of protective tape on the neck there just so in case I hit it accidentally. Working on this with a spoke shaver, and I realise it's just not going to work. The handle's sort of hitting the neck. I can't get the angle I need to do it, so I decided to get the rasp out and just start attacking with the rasp. Carving the neck too far up the neck was a pretty bad mistake in this build. But as I keep telling myself while I'm doing this, this is a test build, and making mistakes is good. Because when I make mistakes, I learn something, and I learn, hey, don't do it that way. And that's what it's all about at this stage. Okay, so hit the neck again, but I don't think I damaged the neck. I think it just clipped the tape. The tape protected it, which is why I've got the tape there. So I'm kind of getting there. I can't go any lower with the rasp. I've still got a bit of a problem. That still goes fairly deep into there. So I've got to get in there somehow if I want it to look good. And the other thing was, I started to, you can see here. So I had the rasp coming through here, and then the top of the rasp started to clip this. So I just couldn't get this angle. I couldn't get the angle on here anymore that I wanted because I started to clip this. Clipped it in a couple of spots, which is, not good. Anyway, so when I do the actual guitar, I won't have it. What I will do is keep the neck flat till further out, to say somewhere around here, and then once I've temp mounted the neck with the bolts, I can then make sure this is the shape I want, and then I can then craft the neck back into a roundabout. So just say keep it flat to a roundabout here. I'm not sure whether I want to fix it. I can fix it up a bit more, but to actually fix that now, I'm going to have to go too far back into the neck. I don't really want to. I'm thinking I might just smooth this all up and just leave it, or maybe just glue in a little wedge of wood to fill in the hole. It's not going to look good, and I wouldn't do it if it was a finished guitar, but I'm going to build the proper one a little bit differently, so I might just let it go, just fill it with something for now. But anyway, I just gave the back of this a rough sand because it had plane marks all over it from when I tried to flatten it out a little bit when I first did it. And that actually made this look a bit better once I sanded the back. It sort of blended it in a little bit. I have drawn on pickup location, bridge location, just so it can help me plan out things. I'm going to end up covering this up, of course, so I have to redraw them on the actual body front when we get there. But for now, I've just drawn it on. I've also drawn on, this is my pots, volume and tone. This is my location of my battery because it's an active pickup. And this is where the jack will be. I've just loosely drawn it in there. And when I did my testing, I noticed the jack actually dropped down too far and was hitting the timber. It might be alright once I get the extra, I think 5 mils it is now, thickness of the top on, but I didn't want to take a chance, so I've drilled a hole here so that the tip of the jack can fit in there if it needs to. This section here I'm going to cut out completely to give me access to wiring. So this is where the battery will sit. So I've cut a little I'm making a little recess for the battery to fit into. Couple of reasons. One is because I think the battery might be a bit big. Actually, let me get a battery and check. It's in my pocket. Forgot. Okay. So yeah, so the battery is slightly higher than this, which means the top will collide with the battery. So I need to make a little recess that the battery can fit into. That will also help stop moving the battery moving around, which will be good. I was going to make a case. Well, I was thinking about buying one of those plastic cases or making my own little wooden case, but really I don't have room. It'll just take up way too much room. So I'm just going to cut the recesses here so it fits in, and then I'm going to probably just use Velcro on the battery and Velcro in here to attach it. And I might put a little bit of Velcro on the side as well, so it doesn't bang, just to stop it from rattling.
Alright, so it fits in now. A little bit of room side to side so that when I put the Velcro in it should be snug. If I make it snug now, then the Velcro it won't fit. Now I need to cut out the cavity here. So my volume and control knobs are going to be here. So I've just drilled, before I cut this out, I've actually just drilled a couple of holes where I want them to be. And I've just done that so that I can then put the top on temporarily here, flip it over and just do locating holes for the pots so that I can hopefully position them. Yeah, so I've got marks there now and I can drill these through. So because once I do the cutout, it's going to be a bit harder to position them exactly where I want them.
So I leave this hole looking fairly ugly because it's going to have a massive, very interesting cavity cover on the back of it, which we will do maybe in the next episode. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more new woodworking and stuff like that, please subscribe to CheapSkate, and have a good day. Thanks.